Today, we're diving into a huge topic, one that has literally drawn the maps of our modern world: imperialism. It's a word you hear thrown around all the time, but what does it really mean? Well, let's get into it. Just think about that for a second. For a long time, a pretty small number of countries managed to stretch their power across oceans and continents, controlling the lives of hundreds of millions of people. How on earth did that happen? And maybe more importantly, why? That's what we're here to figure out. So let's break it down to its simplest form. At its heart, imperialism is all about one state dominating another to get something out of it. It could be for raw power, for valuable resources, for new places to sell goods, but that basic dynamic of control is always there. Okay, so that's the textbook definition. But to really get it, we need to look beyond the dictionary. We've got to unpack the history and the machinery that made this whole thing possible. Now, empires have been around for as long as civilization. But when we talk about imperialism today, we're usually talking about European expansion, which really happened in two big waves. The first kicked off way back around 1500, but what we're zeroing in on is that second wave, the one often called New Imperialism. Right, so this period, from the 1870s right up until after World War II, this is when that global race for territory and power just hit an absolute fever pitch, and it completely rewired the planet. So what was lighting the fire under this incredible land grab? You can really boil it down to three main things. First up, you've got the money. Industrial countries were hungry for raw materials to feed their factories and desperate for new customers to buy all the stuff they were making. Second, it was about national ego. Having a huge empire was like the ultimate status symbol, a way to prove you were in the big leagues. And third, and this one is pretty controversial, was this idea of a cultural duty. A genuine belief, however wrong we see it now, that they were doing the world a favor by spreading their superior culture and religion. And if you want to see this competition in action, look no further than Africa. It was a literal free-for-all, the scramble for Africa, where European nations raced to carve up the continent, drawing lines on maps with almost no thought for the people who actually lived there. And this is a perfect example of how strategic and sometimes cutthroat all this was. You see, France went and built the Suez Canal, this amazing shortcut to Asia. Britain, whose empire depended on its route to India, took one look at that canal and basically said, we need to control that. So they moved in and took over Egypt to secure that vital waterway for themselves. And wow, just look at the result. This chart tells the whole story. By the turn of the 20th century, pretty much the entire African continent was under the thumb of a European power. The sheer scale and speed of this takeover was, frankly, mind-boggling. So we've seen the what and the how, but the real juicy part, the question that thinkers have debated for more than a century is, why? Why did this happen? Well, that's where we get into the great debate. It turns out there's no single easy answer. Instead, we've got five major theories, five totally different lenses for trying to understand what really drove imperialism. First up, the conservative view. The idea here is that empires were kind of like a national pressure release valve. You've got problems and unrest building up at home. Well, just get everyone focused on an adventure overseas. It was a way to redirect all that tension outward. Then you've got the liberal view. Now, they also point to economics, but with a twist. Their argument was that rich countries were making way more stuff than their own people could afford to buy. So what do? You go find colonies where you can get cheaper labor and new people to sell to. The key part of this theory, though, is that it was a choice made by governments, not some unavoidable force of nature. Okay, now enter the Marxists, especially Lenin. They looked at the liberal argument and said, you're missing the point. It's not a choice. It's the inevitable end game of capitalism. For them, capitalism would always push countries to expand, to compete for markets, until they finally crashed into each other, leading to wars like World War I. But then the realists come along and poke some holes in that theory. They're like, hang on a second. If that's true, then why weren't all capitalist countries imperialist? And what about all those ancient empires like Rome? They weren't capitalist. For realists, it's simpler. It's just about the timeless, ruthless competition for power between nations. And that brings us to our last theory, the social psychological one. And man, this quote from Joseph Schumpeter just nails it. The idea is that imperialism can become a kind of institutional habit. A country builds up a massive military for defense, but then that powerful military machine needs something to do to justify its existence. So it just keeps pushing for more expansion for expansion's sake, long after it stops making any logical sense. So, All these vast empires, they couldn't last forever. The age of European empires did come to an end. But even though they're gone from the maps, their legacy is, well, it's everywhere. So what happened? What was the tipping point? Well, after World War II, the whole world had changed. A powerful anti-colonial spirit was rising everywhere. The old empires were broke and couldn't afford to maintain control. And you had two new superpowers on the block, the US and the Soviet Union, who were both against the old colonial system, for their own reasons. And once that dam broke, it was just this incredible flood of decolonization that swept across the globe. Britain left India in '47. France fought brutal wars but eventually left places like Indochina and Algeria. It was a process that unfolded over decades, completely redrawing the world as we know it. And if you want to get a sense of just how massive this shift was, get a load of this number: 49. That's how many countries got their independence from Great Britain alone. Just one empire breaking apart created dozens of new nations. But it's not like someone just flipped a switch and the age of empire was over. It's more complicated. You still have remnants today. Some places, like Bermuda, have actually chosen to stay connected to their former ruler for economic reasons, while in other spots, the fight for true independence is still going on. And that's really the question we're left with, isn't it? The old formal empires are gone, sure, but as new global powers rise, new forms of influence and control are definitely going to appear. So the real question for us today is, what will this new imperialism look like? And have we learned anything at all from the past?